Welcome to the Saturday Slam and Jam here on the Athletic NBA Daily. On today's show, we're talking about Giannis, we're talking about the Pistons, and our other favorite things. We're going to talk to Tim Cato about the strange start for the Dallas Mavericks. And then to end, we're going to do a little Mavs trivia. To start, though, Al, tell me about the top stories this week.
Well, Andrew, our top story this week is unfortunately an injury, but it's an important one because it's an injury that could shape the Western Conference race and the title race in general. Chet Holmgren, who had gotten off to an all-star start this season, he broke his right iliac wing after a nasty-looking fall under the rim. The Thunder announced that a return-to-play plan won't be shared for 8 to 10 weeks, but that Chet is expected to return in the 24-25 season. The Thunder remain number one in the West as of Friday afternoon at 10-2, but face a challenging stretch ahead until Isaiah Hartenstein hopefully returns later this month.
He's not wearing his brace anymore, Al. The brace is off. So, just saying.
Breaking
get ready.
Brace news from Andrew. From one number seed to another, the Cleveland Cavaliers continue their early season rampage this week, stretching their undefeated streak to 13 games. This week's wins included a very impressive shellacking of the Golden State Warriors, as well as back-to-back wins over the desperate Milwaukee Bucks. The Cavs are now entering historical territory, Andrew. Their 13 wins to start the season is currently the 6th best start to a season in NBA history.
Wow.
And as if Cavs fans needed any more encouragement to get excited about the season, all 6 teams that have started a season with at least 13 straight wins have at least made it to the conference finals. Now, if they win their next 3, they get to 16-0, they would sit alone with the 2nd best start to an NBA season ever, behind only the Warriors' 24-win streak to start the 15-16 season. Their next 3 games, Chicago, doable, Charlotte, very doable, and finally, a TNT matchup next Tuesday against the Boston Celtics in Boston. Wow. Now, that game may sound great on its own, but what if I told you it will be played on a blindingly green court? That's right. Cavs Celtics is also an NBA Cup game, which officially started this week. Night 1 of the NBA Cup included some incredible games. We got the Celtics got off to an 0-1 start in the NBA Cup after the Atlanta Hawks came into Boston and won 117-116. The Hawks were without Trae Young, but they got the win behind Jalen Johnson's 18, 12, and 10 triple-double, and Dyson Daniels, who has collected 23 steals over his last 4 games. And the last player to have at least that many steals over 4 games was 2015 Robert Covington, a.k.a. Lord Covington, as he was known in fantasy basketball at the time. Prior to Covington, however, you have to go all the way back to Kendall Gill in 1999.
Kendall Gill!
Now, after Celtics Hawks, we got a crazy finish in an NBA Cup game between Detroit and Miami, which we'll talk about a little later. And then the night ended with arguably the best game of the season, Warriors-Mavs. It was Klay Thompson's first game back at the Chase Center. Warriors fans showing their appreciation by wearing the Captain Klay hats. And in response, Klay got on a classic heater, hitting 6 of his 12 three-pointers. But in the end, it was the other Splash brother who put the game to bed. Steph ended with 37 points in the game, including 12 straight in the final 3 minutes to give the Warriors the 120-117 win. Now, should we be panicking about the Mavs, who lost 4 straight? Honestly, the worst Wheel of Fandom week we have ever had. When you take into account,
we've been cursing teams so far.
When you think about how good the team was, because we've had bad teams before they've lost. Mavs are a good team.
Yeah.
To lose all the games, but also to lose all the games in clutch time in kind of a similar way. We'll figure out later if we need to stress about them. But in the meantime, one team we don't need to panic about anymore, Orlando Magic. We were worried about the Magic a week ago. They had lost 5 straight. They were struggling to adapt without Paulo. This week, sun is back out in Orlando because they won all 4 of their games this week. And granted, 3 of those wins, Hornets, Wizards, Pelicans, a team that is currently exploring the depths of bad luck.
You can only play the teams that are put in front of you, Al.
That is true, Andrew. And credit to the Magic, their 4th win was a very nice one over the Pacers, who Orlando held to only 90 points. Last year at this time, I was talking about the Pacers as an extreme team because they paired a nearly league worst defense with the league's best offense by a wide margin. This season, the Pacers offense is currently ranked 16th on cleaning the glass, while their defense has only improved to 21st overall. Tyrese Halliburton scored only 9 points in the game. Another strange one in what has been a disappointing disappointing start to the season for him. Hallie is currently shooting under 40% from the field, and he's shooting 27% from three. His points per game and assists per game, lowest level they've been since he's been with the Pacers.
Weird.
Should we be worried, Andrew? One player we probably shouldn't worry about so much is Victor Wembanyama. Wemby will have a bad shooting night. We'll talk ourselves into the idea of it meaning something. Oh, here's his flaw. And then he'll go out the next game and do something that makes you feel like an idiot for ever worrying in the first place. Since a 4 for 13 performance against Portland, where he shot 31% from the field, Wemby has made 59% of his shots in his next 3 games, including 20 of his last 37 three-pointers. And it all reached a climax on Wednesday night in a game against the Wizards where Wemby scored 50 points, including 8 of 16 from 3. Good Lord. Yeah. The Spurs are now 500 at 6-6. You'll hear people describe Wemby as an alien, a freak, but don't forget the OG freak, because on the same night that Wemby dropped 50, the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, dropped 59 in an overtime game against the Pistons that included going 16 of 17 from the free throw line. Giannis's final line was 59, 14, and 7 with 2 steals, 3 blocks. The Bucks are on their first winning streak of the season, Andrew, but still sit at 4-8. 12th in the East. Those are the top stories this week, Andrew.
Oh man, yeah, we'll talk about the Bucks a little bit more later, and specifically Giannis a little bit more later, just because there's been a lot of good stuff happening with Giannis himself on the court. Before we get to that, let's go to the BetMGM line of the week. This week, Al, I wanted to take a look at the Coach of the Year odds from BetMGM. So I just want to take a trip back to the preseason odds for Coach of the Year for 2025. Joe Mazzulla sits at the top. Makes sense. Jamal Mosley also sitting at the top at plus 1,000 for those two. Nick Nurse was third, also plus 1,000. We were feeling really good about Nick Nurse possibly being Coach of the Year. That's not looking so good. Mark Daigneault, Chris Finch, another one to round out the top 6 there. Not looking so good. Taylor Jenkins, and then poor man Eric Spoelstra, who we'll talk about later. We'll save that story for later, which I know that you guys probably know this, but Spo's having a little bit of trouble. Top now, which makes sense. Kenny Atkinson at a plus 140 to win Coach of the Year currently. It's looking pretty good for the undefeated Cavs. Mike Budenholzer, who's gotten the Suns off to a hot start before all of their injuries. They're missing KD, Beal. Nurkic is questionable. Grayson Allen is questionable tonight. Recording this on Friday afternoon. So I just think that it's interesting to look back. Also, Steve Kerr is up here. He was nowhere to be seen in there. Jamal Mosley is still on this list. But what name sticks out to you, Al, for Coach of the Year?
I mean, Atkinson deserves to be the runaway favorite at this point.
It's obvious.
The Cavs are undefeated. Not only that, but for a team that we worried about their offense so much coming this season, they are currently on Cleaning the Glass, the number 2 offense in the league. Yep. And even if you look at the pairing of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, which people were worried about, last year, I think they were around a plus 1.5 on the court together. This year, granted, it's only 200 minutes, but they're a plus 10 together. Like, massive difference when those guys are on the court. It's been very successful this season. Obviously, they haven't lost a game. So if you wanted to go with anyone else, I think the name I like the most is Steve Kerr, because if you're choosing between like Coach Bud and Steve Kerr, thinking that, okay, if one of Phoenix or Golden State could end up as the number 1 seed in the West, that would kind of be a big shock, and so they could get it. I like the underlying numbers for Golden State a lot more right now. I mean, if you just look at point differential, Phoenix is only a plus 0.4, whereas Golden State is 5th in the league at plus 9.2. So I just believe in the Warriors more right now. And so plus 800 for Steve Kerr. If you're going to choose anyone other than Kenny, that would probably be my pick.
Yeah, I like that one too, just because you can see the impact that Steve Kerr is having on the Warriors. Like, they're playing their style of ball. Like, they have the players now to play their style. And for years they tried to see, like, can we get other guys to play in our offense to play this style? Like, they tried James Wiseman, who they spent the second pick in the draft on. They tried guys like Kelly Oubre, who's like not a bad player, but just like not a Warriors player.
Right.
And it feels like, this summer they were let's just get Warriors players. Let's just get Steve Kerr players. And I think it's so interesting because I've learned that Steve Kerr and Mark Daigneault, who coaches the Thunder, have a pretty close relationship and talk a lot. I think some of that is like both of these teams have like clear identity. And like that's something the Warriors have had for a long time. And there are like quote unquote Warriors players and there are Thunder players, and I think that, just seeing both of those guys operate in the way that they operate are pretty similar in a lot of ways. And I just think that it's kind of interesting to see that line drawn between the two of them. I just think it's kind of cool. But yeah, Steve Kerr has his imprints all over the Warriors this season. So it's been cool to see. It's been cool to kind of see the resurrection of that team again.
And to that point, I mean, the fact that an end of the bench guy in Lindy Waters III can go from OKC to Golden State and he fits right in, like it makes sense because
tells you a lot.
A quick decision maker. He's a good shooter. He tries hard on defense. Like, yeah, those two teams are kind of similar in the type of players they would target. Okay, Andrew, it's time for our favorites of the week. And we start off this week with our favorite quote of the week. Andrew, what was your favorite quote this week?
This one came from LeBron Ramon James Sr. on Reddit. And it was LeBron talking after a game, just being asked, like, how much longer can you do this? He's gotten 3 triple-doubles in a row. Obviously, the oldest player to do it since LeBron when he was, I think this was like 4 years ago. But he's just asked, like, how long can you do this? Can you keep this thing up? And he said, I don't know. I'm going to play. I don't know how much. He said, I don't know if I'm going to play much longer. If it's 1 year or 2 years, whatever the case may be, I'm not going to play until the wheels fall off. And then I thought this was probably the most interesting part of it. Because like, yeah, okay. We all kind of suspect that a guy who's going to turn 40 soon is like not going to play for that much longer. Duh. But he says, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be the guy that disrespects the game because I want to be on the floor. So he's not going to play until the wheels fall off because he's saying he doesn't want to disrespect the game. I just thought that was interesting. And I think honestly, it's kind of a weird way to think about it because like Vince Carter played until the wheels fell off, but like people gained great respect for Vince Carter as he like played into his older age and like adapted and played into a role. I just think it's a weird way to phrase it because it's almost like, wait, who is he saying this about? Like, certainly he wouldn't be talking about like Kobe Bryant, who kind of played until the wheels fell off. Tim Duncan probably played until the wheels fell off. Like, I don't really, it's a weird message LeBron is trying to send there with the disrespect the game thing. Like, I think that's just kind of weird, but like to say like, hey, it could be 1 or 2 years. I don't know. Is interesting. And he like wants to go out like still being a top player. That's fine. I think both approaches are fine. As long as you're, I don't know, I can see like the Allen Iverson thing being maybe something you would point to where he just played and like was like, hey, I'm the same guy. And clearly he just wasn't. And I guess it's just like a recognition of like, can you still be the same guy kind of thing? And maybe LeBron's just trying to say like, I will only be this. Like, this is what I am. And I will play until I'm no longer this, which is it's interesting because I don't think that Vince Carter disrespected the game at all. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, the problem for LeBron is like I can't even. It still feels like we're years away from him like averaging under 20 points.
Yeah,
like
totally.
It still feels like he could do this for another couple of years. So
yeah, it does. It does.
My favorite quote of the week comes from Blazers land up here in Portland. I'm going to talk about some of the good with the Blazers a little later, but first I want to go back to Sunday night because the Blazers lost by 45 at home to a Grizzlies team that did not have Ja Morant. They did not have Desmond Bane. After the game, head coach Chauncey Billups, among other things, said that he told the team, quote, "Anybody that sleeps well tonight, you're a loser," which is an incredible quote. Imagine being a Blazers player that night. You get home after a tough loss. You start dozing off. Then you wake up in a panic as you realize what a huge loser you are for getting some rest. It's one of those quotes that can look good or bad, depending on how the team responds. And luckily for Billups, the Blazers absolutely responded because they won their next 2 games, which are both home wins over the Timberwolves. But, if they come out and get blown out in those games, you kind of just have to say, well, I guess this is just a team full of losers, because based on what Billups said. So it was just nice to see them actually respond to that quote, because that quote was so direct. I mean,
so funny to see, like,
when you
he's like
bounce
checking
back from it.
Yeah.
Like when you bounce back from a quote like that, I saw some Blazers fans already like putting that on t-shirts. Like, you can do that when you bounce back. If you don't bounce back, that becomes like the death knell of the season.
Oh, it's like Chauncey called them losers, and they are, and like they need to get rid of Chauncey. They need to do all these things.
Right.
I wonder if Chauncey's like checking their Apple Watches, the next morning. Like, how did you guys sleep? Get over here. All right, let's check. It's time to check out who the losers are. Who slept well? Who got 8 hours in here? Loser. So
we're moving on now to our favorite stat this week. And my favorite stat this week comes from Joe Wolf on @Joey_W, who writes for The Score. Now, I've actually updated Joe's stat since there's been a couple games since he posted this on Twitter. He was comparing the average shot distance for two players. So how far are these players from the basket when they shoot the ball on average? First player, Damian Lillard. For his career, the average shot that Dame takes occurs 16.4 feet from the basket. Makes sense. Long distance sniper his whole career. The player Joe compared Dame to, Victor Wembanyama, who as of Friday has an average shot distance this season of 16.9. He's 7'4". Average shot is almost 17 feet away. As another comparison, Steph Curry is at 17.6 this season.
Wow.
I love this stat because it came amidst this larger conversation about Wemby's shot decisions this week, his shot distribution. And I think for non-Spurs fans who are hoping that Wemby isn't going to be a destroyer of worlds who prevents their favorite team from winning a championship in the future, his questionable shooting is really all we have left. You could maybe comfort yourself earlier this week thinking, okay, well, maybe he'll be inefficient on offense. He'll settle for too many threes. He won't be completely dominant. And so you see that stat, you have some hope. And then he hits 20 of his next 37 threes, bumping his three-point percentage from 23% to 34% in just 3 games. And you're right back to, I don't know what to do with this guy.
Yeah, it's insane what he's done. My favorite stat of the week is you look at the East and you look at the standings, and it's just like, it just makes you want to throw up. I mean, you look at the teams that are in the top 10, and like the Detroit Pistons, like God bless them, 5-8. They're in the 10th seed right now. 5-8 at the 10th seed. It's just crazy. I mean, you have to be 500 to be the 10th seed in the West. And you're probably going to need to be maybe a little bit better than that to make it in the West. But for the East, like the bar is so low. So I wanted to look back and see, okay, let's try to find a stat that tells you how bad it is this season. And it couldn't be this bad in the past, right? Well, no, it hasn't been. Up until this point in the season, there are only 4 teams in the East with a positive net rating. That's the Celtics, the Cavs, the Knicks, and the Magic. That's it. And so I wanted to look back and see, okay, up until this point in the season, in the past, let's go 10 years, has there been a year where there's been 4 or less teams with a positive net rating through like the first 10 games, essentially? And the answer is absolutely not. There has not been a year where the East has started this poorly. Last season, there were 7 teams with a positive net rating through this many games. The year before, it was 8. In 21-22, Al, we were wondering, is the East back? There were 10 teams with a positive net rating through the first like 10 or 12 games. There were the average amount is 7. 7 is a typical number. So 7 and 21, 7 and 20, 6 and 19, 6 and 18, 7 and 17, and then 8 teams in 15-16 had a positive net rating through this first little section of the season. The East is as bad as it's ever been. And I just don't know what's going to fix this. A lot of this is injury related, sure. But boy, like this trend with the Eastern Conference is crazy. And you talk to like executives or you talk to people around the Western Conference, and they talk about the West a lot, about how difficult it is to get through the Western Conference. Not only to get through the playoffs in the West, but to just play regular season games against more Western Conference teams. It's just tougher. And it has been, and it may be tougher today than it's ever been, because teams like the Bucks are getting a pass. Teams like the Sixers, there's hope. There's nothing but hope for these teams that have had these horrific starts because the Eastern Conference is this pathetic. It is just wild to me.
Yeah, that's why like when we talk about the Bucks and Sixers, and we always talk about, you can't panic just because of the East. At the same time, that almost should make you panic more when you realize how bad they are in this Eastern Conference. Like these teams might just not be good at all.
Yeah.
Now going to move on, Andrew, to our favorite player this week. And I think I know who your favorite player was this week. Andrew, who was it?
I'm going to go with Giannis. I kind of feel for Giannis a bit. We have the 4-8 Bucks. It's been just absolutely pathetic for them. They're 21st in offense, 16th in defense, which is actually like, okay, that's a little bit better than I thought it would be. 16th in defense. I was surprised. But they've been a huge disappointment. And the most disappointing thing to me is that maybe Giannis is better than ever. Here are his last 5 games. We mentioned the 59-point game. 59, 14, 7, and 2 with 3 blocks. He had 23, 4, and 7. He had 43, 13, and 5, 24, 12, and 2, 31, 16, and 2. Unbelievable. In that 59-point game, he had 22 of the Bucks' first 24 points in the first quarter against the Pistons. Giannis now has the most 50-point games with 10-plus rebounds since the NBA-ABA merger. And that's thanks to user a fan of Sports 44 from Reddit, from the Bucks Reddit page. Same guy, fan of Sports 44, also reminded us that this week, that the day that Giannis dropped 59 was 15 years to the date that Brandon Jennings dropped 55 points as a rookie. Isn't that weird? That was just
I remember watching that game.
Yeah, I remember like being like Brandon Jennings, like new like star of the NBA. Like that was wild to me. But that was 15 years to the day. Like that is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Giannis is also the first player in franchise history to record 1,000 career blocks for the Bucks. Giannis has also improved in the mid-range. I'd watched him and like noticed like he's making more mid-range shots. He's shooting 46% from the mid-range this season so far, which is up 11 percentage points from the last 2 years. The last 2 years, like clockwork, he was 35% from mid-range. So it's just a shot you didn't want to take. And now he's like 3 percentages away from where DeMar DeRozan is this year. Like he's been really good in the mid-range. He's been incredible. He leads the league in points per game at 33. He's averaging 12 rebounds and 5 assists per game with almost 1.5 blocks. He's shooting a career high 61.6% from the field. And yet, all we want to talk about is this just flailing Bucks team. They've been horrible. They went all in and won a title in 21, which wasn't that long ago, but the NBA is all about what have you done for me lately. And the Bucks lately have just held on to this aging roster for too long. They've made a super calculated misstep in trading for Dame, which has not worked out so far, and they're just kind of stuck. Everyone wants to talk about trading Giannis, including Giannis himself, to our very own Sam Amick this season. But again, to go back to the Eastern Conference, the saving grace for the Bucks is that they're in the East. Somehow they're only one game out of being a top 6 seed. One game. After all of this hand-wringing, like they could be a top 6 seed in just a couple games. But what happens in the playoffs is going to matter most. Like they've got to be healthy going into the playoffs, Giannis included, Middleton included. They need to have some success, which they haven't had since the title. But Al, I still love watching Giannis. He deserves some shine for stepping up his game, even though he doesn't really have the squad to support him.
Yeah, he is one of those superstars who you can rely on every single night just to go out there and play absurdly hard for all 48 minutes. My favorite player this week, Andrew, not as big of a star as Giannis. I mentioned how the Blazers followed up their embarrassing loss to the Grizzlies with back-to-back wins over the Wolves. So the most recent win was especially fun because we finally got to see all the young guys start, and they all delivered. Like Donovan Clingan, 17 and 12 with 8 blocks in the win. Shaedon Sharpe, career high 33 points. But I want to talk about a Blazers role player, Toumani Camara. Now, if you don't know, Camara is a second-year player. He was included by the Suns in the DeAndre Ayton, Yusuf Nurkic trade. 6'7" wing, 7-foot wingspan. At Young Wizzy DFS on Twitter, he has a tool that compares physical measurements of prospects. One of Kamara's closest comps physically is Josh Smith, just to give you an idea of how big he is.
Yeah.
He's huge. Like the pitch with Toumani, it's a familiar story. Here's this big wing who can be a great switchable defender, And if he ever learns how to shoot, you might have something really good. Well, Tumani's off to a great start this season. He's hitting 44% of his threes on 3.5 attempts per game, which is actually a continuation of what he did post All-Star break last season. He hit 43% of his threes in those final 17 games. And there's still legitimate questions about his offensive game, but his defensive baseline with plus shooting would be enough to make him a valuable piece in the league for a long time. Yeah. But he's not my favorite because of the stats. He's my favorite because he's an MFer, Andrew. If you have not watched Toumani Camara, he's a crazy guy. If you were picking recently drafted players based on who would be involved in the most kerfuffles in their career, I might pick Toumani Camara number one.
Wow.
He's so much fun. He has no fear. He's super physical. He's always willing to mix it up. He's always willing to put just a little bit extra on like running into another guy. And a great example was this week in the Blazers' first win over the Wolves. He makes this tough basket over Julius Randle. He immediately goes up to Anthony Edwards, not even his defender, lets him know, quote, I do this, you know that since college. Now, if you don't know, Toumani and Ant were actually both freshmen at Georgia together. Yeah. But it was just a fun moment because we all know Ant is a huge trash talker, and seeing a player like Toumani go after him was hilarious and really speaks to how he plays in the NBA and why he's so easy to root for. So, you know, if the Blazers are coming to town or if your team's playing or you're watching on TV, just pay attention to Toumani. He's very fun to watch. He'll be guarding your team's best player most of the time.
Yeah. Also one of two players from Belgium in the NBA.
And the other one is
AJ Mitchell. AJ Mitchell from the Thunder.
Okay. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have gotten that. Yeah. Okay. Now, we usually do at this point our favorite team to be panicked about this week. But we're flipping it. We're flipping to Andrew because we can't be panicked every week. I mean, we can. I'm actually very capable of doing it. But this week, we're flipping it. We're going to do our favorite team or player that we are pleasantly surprised by this week. Pleasantly surprised. And my favorite team to be pleasantly surprised by this week is the Detroit Pistons. Now, we had Bryce Simon on a few weeks ago, and we had a pretty optimistic conversation about a team that was 1-5 at the time. Mm-hmm. And if you thought I sounded positive about Detroit on that episode, please know I wasn't. I really wasn't. I was very skeptical. I thought the Pistons might have tricked Bryce the same way this dumb team tricked me last season when I spoke positively about them right before they lost 28 straight. Well, since that episode, Pistons have gone 4-4. They would be 5-3 if Ron Holland had hit one free throw in the end of that game against Milwaukee.
Oh my gosh, that was so sad. That was so sad.
It was so really short. Bad for him. Yeah. The first one was so off, and you kind of knew at that point, like, oh no, okay. Yeah. Overtime. They're super competitive night to night. They're tied for second with Brooklyn for most minutes in the clutch, only behind the Suns by 1 minute. The defense is up to 14th overall, which is crazy for the Pistons. It's improved from 25th last season. Their shot profile is improving. Percentage of shots from the mid-range has dropped by 5%, and that has all gone to rim and three-point attempts. I don't think this team is good, to be clear. But in an Eastern Conference that is as bad as you previously described, the idea of the Pistons being that team that ends up in the 10th spot honestly doesn't seem as outlandish as it might have in the preseason. For sure. Or even when they were 1-5. And if this team is serious, we're going to find out over these next couple weeks because they have a huge opportunity to start making moves in the standings. Their next 6 games, Toronto, Washington, Chicago, Charlotte, Orlando without Paulo, and Toronto again. Like, the expectation should be at least 4-2.
There's an opportunity there. Yeah.
Yeah. So for now, I'm pleasantly surprised, but I do want to see them take advantage over this next stretch if they're going to be a serious team. And by serious, I mean like being a play-in team potentially.
Yeah. I want to say that T-Wolves fans are just lucky that we're not doing panic teams this week. That's all. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and Dallas fans. Honestly.
And Dallas fans. Well, we get to talk about Dallas later anyways. Yeah. But T-Wolves fans, you're just lucky that we're not talking about your team. I'm going to go with the Denver Nuggets. Since I declared that I was worried or panicked about the Nuggets, they've done nothing but prove me wrong. They've won 3 games against the Thunder, Heat, and Mavs. Now they go on a 3-game road trip to play against teams that might have worse injury luck than them in the Pelicans and then the Grizzlies twice in Memphis. They're holding everything together really well at 7-3, which is good for 4th in the West. Most of it is because of the play of Nikola Jokic. Jokic is listed as questionable Friday night against the Pelicans with a personal matter, which I believe could be Baby Jokic number 2. Very exciting for Nikola. But his play this season has been MVP worthy. his numbers are just like video game numbers. 37, 18, and 15 against the Mavs. 30, 11, and 14 against Miami. 23, 20, and 16 against the Thunder. 28, 14, and 13 against Toronto. I mean, just absurd numbers for him. Like, they just don't even make sense. And they're feeling like playful again. Like, after the game the other night, Michael Malone was asked if he ever apologized to Nikola Jokic for the amount of minutes that he plays him. And he kind of chuckled, and then he said, "You see his paycheck? Have you seen Nikola Jokic's paycheck?" Like, they're having fun again, which is good to see. But later on in that quote, Michael Malone did say that he couldn't play him 38 to 40 minutes sustainably throughout the season. So they're going to need some help. Like, they're going to need to get their guys back. And he said, like, we need to find some guys on the bench to help us out. Which they absolutely do. Russell Westbrook has played really well for them in the absence of these players. And it's kind of interesting because I think that's kind of how Russ is. We talked about playing till the wheels fall off and like disrespecting the game. Not saying that Russ has done that, but I think like Russ just knows how to play one way. And like when he played for the Wizards, he was amazing. I think whenever he played for the Clippers without James Harden, he was super good. And like now that he's in this like bigger role than like you probably think he should have, he's actually playing really well for the Nuggets. Like there's some optimism for Nuggets fans now. Like they need to get it together injury wise, and they need to have a good sustained stretch. But like they're keeping it afloat until they get healthy, which I think is super important, especially in the West.
Yeah, that game he had against OKC, 29, 6-6. I didn't know he still had it like that, Andrew.
Yeah,
Russ dropping 29.
That was vintage Russ. He looked great in that game. You got to give credit where credit's due.
Okay, Andrew, that brings us to our final favorite thing of the week, and it's our favorite moment this week. And I'm going to the end of the Detroit-Miami game. I mentioned it earlier, and this was so entertaining to watch live. Yeah, because just so many things were happening. First, it's the end of the game. Cade has a chance to win it, and he turns the ball over. And it was his 7th turnover of the game. He's leading the league right now in turnovers. And that specific turnover, I've seen that turnover so many times from Cade, where he's driving and he just gets it stripped from him. And it happens so much. And so I was so frustrated with it. Like, come on, Cade. And then they get the ball back and they have a sidelines out of bound play. And he throws this lob to Jalen Duren. And the Heat just are nowhere to be found. I mean, it's so rare on those types of like out of bounds lob plays where you actually just get a clean dunk out of it, which is what they got. And I think because he was so shocked, head coach Eric Spoelstra calls a timeout that they don't have. He said he was
so mad. Yeah.
Yeah. So he calls this timeout. They don't have it. And so not only do you get a free throw, but you also get the ball back. And so Detroit ends up winning this game. And as I mentioned, like they've had a lot of these games, Detroit, where it comes down to the end and it's all about this young team trying to figure out how to win. They weren't able to do it against the Bucks, where Ron Holland misses those free throws.
Yep.
But luckily for them, they got this ending in an NBA Cup game nonetheless, Andrew.
I know. It was important. That was a very important win.
It was important. So it was just a really fun end of game sequence because there were mistakes on both sides, but also really good plays on both sides. Just a really fun start to the NBA Cup.
Yeah. So much guilt from Eric Spoelstra. And he was so mad at himself.
I felt bad for him.
That presser was just tough to watch. Okay, my moment is there was one game on Thursday night in the NBA, and we're going to talk more about the Mavs with Tim Cato here shortly, but I feel bad that this was like the only game, because if maybe this wasn't the only game, it maybe doesn't get as much attention as it's getting right now, but it was literally the only game last night. End of Mavs Jazz in Utah. About 30 seconds left. The score is 110 to 111 in favor of Utah. Jordan Clarkson gets Luka in the air on a pump fake, and Derek Lively has to come over and help. So Luka getting burned. Lively has to come over and help. Lively actually tips the shot, but he has to leave his own man, which happens to be John Collins, who just grabs the ball out of the air and then dunks it. So now you have the Jazz up 3 shortly. That putback slam, though, it's a harbinger, Al. It's a harbinger for what's about to happen. Next possession, Luka finds Klay Thompson for a wing 3, ties the game up. And now there's about 26 seconds left on the shot clock. or on the game clock, and Jordan Clarkson brings the ball up. He's just looking to dribble the ball out, probably looking to get just a step back three or whatever he can get to see what happens before this game feels like it's going to overtime. That's not what happens here. Luka's supposed to be guarding John Collins, who's kind of in the dunker spot. And Collins does a pretty good job of kind of lulling the defense to sleep a little bit with his movements, but he moves back into this dunker spot. And you can see, if you haven't seen this, you need to go check it out, because Clarkson and Collins making eye contact is like caught on camera perfectly, where Clarkson just lights up. You can just see it in his face. And he throws an absolute bullet to John Collins, who then dunks it. And this dunk ends up winning the game. It was a wild sequence that was like all highlights of or I guess low lights of Luka playing defense. I want to highlight the crowd in Utah. Shout out to the crowd. Like, there's not a whole lot to show up for with this Utah Jazz team, and yet like the crowd continues to show up in Utah. I think that's such a huge deal for fan bases to continue to show up even when their teams aren't very good. And then just go check out Markieff Morris as this play is happening to John Collins. He's got his hands on his head. His eyes are wide. He's just like, no, it's so good. It is so good. And then in the final possession, Luka tries to create something. They send a double, throws to Najee Marshall in the corner, who just swiftly airballs a three. Really, really rough loss for the Mavericks. We're going to continue to talk about those Dallas Mavericks with our guy Tim Cato right after this quick break.
All right, Andrew, it's time for the Wheel of Fandom, the weekly segment where we spin a wheel, it lands on a team, and we become fans of that team for the next week. And this week, we got the Dallas Mavericks, and we destroyed them, Andrew. The Mavs had a rough week. They lost all 4 of their games. The 4 losses came to the Suns, Nuggets, Warriors, and Jazz by a total of 8 points combined.
Oh, no.
The Mavs are currently 5-7, 12th in the West, with the 10th ranked offense, 9th ranked defense, Berkeley in the glass. Andrew, if our favorite team is the Mavs, who is our guest?
It's my guy Tim Cato from All City. Tim, what's up?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to still be back. Glad I still get invited back, even though we are not officially coworkers, but spiritually at heart, you guys are always coworkers to me.
That's right. We'll always have Tim Cato on Slam and Jam, always. So going into the season, Tim, a common argument for the Mavs over this season was how they played after the trade deadline last season, going 18-9 down the stretch. The Mavs have started the season 5-7, which is probably disappointing for a lot of Mavs fans. But what have been the major issues for this during this slow start for the Mavericks?
I mean, you can make an argument that some of the issues is that they're not after the trade deadline. One commonality, one common trend between both of the deep playoff runs that Dallas made was that they came together late in the season. Mm-hmm. And, so that's 3 seasons ago when they went to the conference finals. And of course, last season when they went to the finals. This is a team that for some reason takes a while to really put it together. Now, this season was supposed to be different. This season, they came in with an offseason that was supposed to give Dallas the deepest team that they have had. Injuries eroded at that right away. Dante Exum remains out. PJ Washington has missed games. Maxi Kleber, who is an injury-prone player, to be fair, as is Exum, he has missed time. Derek Lively missed a few games. Kyrie Irving in the loss and the defeat on Thursday night against Utah, the 4th straight, he missed. That said, good teams still win without some of their rotation players. It's not like Luka and Kyrie have been missing the majority of these games. And so, yeah, it is absolutely a disappointing season thus far, a disappointing start for Dallas. I'm not quite at the point where I am willing to change my expectations for the team coming into the season. But this is a troubling trend that they keep running into, where they start very slow. The defense is top 10. The offense is top 10. These are usually marks of a title contender. As you guys said, it's been a combined 8 points that they've lost these 4 straight games. Just a little bit here or there could have easily changed something. But that's not really an excuse. And I just think Dallas is going to get to the same point that they often find themselves in under Jason Kidd, where they're, trying to make up ground. They're behind and they're trying to catch up. We've seen that happen. I still believe that's going to happen. But trying to catch up, trying to get back to where they need to be, that is a recipe for Luka to overextend himself, to play too many minutes, to be tired, exhausted, to have injury issues, nagging, stuff that he just can't quite get rid of going into the postseason. It's a recipe for Dallas to not have, home court advantage in the first round. And it all just adds up to a team that can still put it together, a team that's still very talented, and a team that I believe will end up showing that talent, but not in a way that is conducive to them finally getting over this hump and really being a team that is feared going into the playoffs, not just one that is playing from behind. And so, yeah, it's disappointment is the right word, and as much as we can talk more about what needs to come together, the fault really lies kind of a little bit of everywhere. Every single player, the coaching staff, there's a lot to blame. There's a lot of blame to go around right now.
So I wanted to ask you about Luka, because his usage, it's slightly down this season. I didn't do these stats after the Utah game, so they're slightly off, but his touches per game have dropped from 91.8 to 82.1. Time of possession per game has dropped from 8.3 to 6.7. Luka has said he's still adjusting to playing off ball more. And when he was asked about what stands out about that adjustment, he said, quote, just overall, just playing without the ball, just all of it. What do you think about what do you think about the plan to have Luka play off ball more? And do you think Luka is actually interested in executing that plan?
So he is playing off the ball more. I do think that the touches and the time of possession, it's a little bit skewed because some of that off the ball is just that he's not bringing the ball up the court. And when, he brings the ball up the court about, let's say 70% of the time when he's on the court, 80% of the time when he's on the court in previous seasons. Now it's down to about 50%. That is going to have a material impact on just time of possession. That's about 8 seconds, a dozen times per game. And that will show in the stats. That said, a big part of Dallas's offseason was to bring in more ball handlers and to bring in more shot creators. Najee Marshall has been someone who has been completely entrusted to dribble, to drive, to bring the ball up the court, to orchestrate fast breaks. They've been playing a lot of guards. Jaden Hardy, Spencer Dinwiddie, Quentin Grimes at times has been entrusted to handle the ball, and Dante Exum when he's healthy is going to be another player. And so I think a lot of this idea, or to my understanding, was to give Luka a little bit more time to rest or to just not be quite as involved in the offense at every waking moment, to make him feel like if he doesn't have the ball in his hands on offense and if Kyrie Irving isn't out there, then the offense can still generate decent shots without him. And in turn, that would allow him, yes, maybe to an extent, become a better off-ball offensive player. I think that is a good, important thing that he should do in his career. I think that's a positive. But it's also to help him on the defensive end, to help bring his minutes down a little bit, and just allow him to be a more complete player overall. And we're not seeing that. We've seen the defense, we've seen Luka play good defense. And when he is fully locked into playing good defense, he can be a average, maybe a bit above average defender. His problem has always been doing that possession after possession after possession, and there have been far too many lapses. And it's not just getting blown by, and it's not just losing his man. There's been some very high profile moments of that happening. But one of the Mavericks' biggest issues so far this season is giving up offensive rebounds. The league average this season for offensive rebounds is just under 11, and in 10 of the Mavericks' 12 games thus far, they've allowed 12 offensive rebounds or more. So they're just conceding second chance points over and over and over again. And the defense is, statistically it's holding up despite that. But it's really, it's these second chance points that are really killing them. And, when you play with Luka often as your second tallest player, and we know that he's a fantastic rebounder, he has to be locked into that side as well. You can't miss box outs. You can't just stand there, and hope the ball falls to him, because, this is kind of the way Dallas has committed to playing. The power forward on this team, if not Luka, if Luka isn't the tallest guy, it's PJ Washington. This is not a team that is running out a 7-footer and a 6'10" player at the same time. And so it's just it's been very frustrating for Mavericks fans. It's been very frustrating for Luka fans, because Luka can be this all generational player, and his offensive game hasn't quite been there. That's been another issue. He's not shooting quite as well. He just doesn't look like he's moving at 100%. And I think it's more, I don't think it's injury specifically. I think he just is getting back into the rhythm of the season. But on the defensive end, his buy-in has, it's too fleeting. It comes and goes way too often. And as a result, Dallas is just in a situation where, whether it's offensive rebounds, whether it's, concentration and effort, it just hasn't been there. And I think the late games, it has shown up a little bit too often. That's been a lot of what's contributed to these, 4 consecutive losses, despite the point differential, the combined point deficit being so small.
Yeah, just to touch on those late game issues. Is there anything else? Like you talked about the defense. Is there anything else that's like sticking out to you with the late game execution, or is it like just like defensive lapses?
Defensive lapses. There's been a little bit too much Luka pulling up for 30-foot shots. I think we all focus on the end of games, and there's been some end of game issues, and this would look a lot better if Dallas just was executing a bit better. I do go back to, oh goodness, which game was it? Was it against Phoenix, where Kyrie Irving was just nuclear? It might have been the game after that. They all blur together at a certain point in the season. But Luka up 2 took a 30-foot shot that he never passed. He barely got it over the line within 8 seconds. So yes, there's been some issues. Dallas has also not started well. Almost consistently, they're shipping 10 points in the first quarter. They've done that almost all season. Against Utah on Thursday, they had one of the most terrific third quarters I've ever seen, where the effort and the buy-in wasn't there. Utah, for example, is a team that's the worst team in the Western Conference. All it takes is not playing horrifically, more or less, for a good team to beat them. And in that third quarter, they did. They played horrifically, and all of a sudden, when in the fourth quarter, they actually played a very good fourth quarter. It was not nearly enough to overcome this deficit that this hole they had dug themselves. So I would say that the fourth quarter stuff has to be better, and I think it will be just in a sense of randomness. Clutch is a very small sample size. I do think it will trend upwards, but Dallas is also digging themselves holes throughout games. Most often the first quarter, and the first quarter against Utah wasn't superb, but it's not exactly encouraging that these first quarter problems are not leaking into other quarters, even if the fourth quarter looks better for the team.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Klay, because we got to see a great Klay game against the Warriors. And if there was a concern about adding him to this team, it was about the defense. And I was wondering, how has the defense looked when Klay's been on the court? And specifically the combo of Klay, Luka, and Kyrie. And I get that, we're probably not going to see Luka lock in every single night until the playoffs defensively. But what have you thought just about Klay's defense and his interacting with with the rest of the team?
Yeah, I would say overall Klay in isolation and in a vacuum has been great. He hasn't quite been the offensive player that he was last season, but there's expectations that he's going to get back there. His shooting percentage, things like that. There's hope that he's going to be a 40% shooter, because he's Klay Thompson. And he's been a shooter who typically starts a little slow, starts a little cold, and then warms up throughout the year. But overall, defensively, he's been fine. I think the concerns are not specifically about Klay Thompson, that he's been horrific, that he's been, Klay Thompson before the season. He talked about wanting to prove that he could still be an all-defense caliber player, and I think it's clear that he's past that. Nearing 35, that he's not that point of his career anymore. But I think he's been okay. He's been a fine defender, and he's been an above-average offensive player who may still yet be a bit better than what he's even shown so far. The question is, and not to say that you were saying otherwise, the question is, can you survive with Klay, Luka, and Kyrie all together? Is that just not enough, punch, not enough oomph on the defensive end? And the numbers so far would agree that those three together have not led to great defensive ratings, that the team performs a bit better when it's two of those three guards plus a Najee Marshall, plus a Quentin Grimes, plus a PJ Washington. Or really, if you're just playing two of those guys, ideally you can get two of those players that I just named, Grimes, Marshall, Najee, and that helps the defense a lot. So I think we're still in a find out mode. I think that it's a little bit too early to come to specific conclusions, and Klay himself certainly has not been a disappointment. But it is going to be the big question hovering around the team all season. Even if they pull things together and start winning a little bit, that question and whether this starting lineup works, whether this closing lineup works. And against Utah on Thursday, Dallas noticeably spent most of the fourth quarter playing without Klay Thompson out there. If that closing lineup is going to work, whether that trio is going to work, or whether Klay Thompson, would fit the team better in another way, that's going to be the big question. I just think it's a little bit too early to say for sure.
Well, Tim, thank you for answering all of our Mavs questions, but it is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, our weekly trivia game where Andrew goes head-to-head with the NBA beat writer. And this week, Tim Cato from the All City Network, DLLS. I was actually watching your guys' post-game pod last night. Folks, Mark Stein is on these post-game pods. You got Tim Cato on these post-game pods. It was great. I didn't realize Mark Stein is just showing up for the post-game pods.
The legendary Mark Stein.
I know. That was
4 times
awesome.
a week.
4 times a week. That's great. Okay, so I've come up with 8 questions all about the Mavs. Some are easy, some are hard. You're going to give me a number between 1 and 8. It'll correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1, and then we'll go back and forth till all the questions have been asked and answered. So to start us off, I just need a number between 1 and 8.
4.
Question number 4. Okay, Klay Thompson. He's the latest Dallas Maverick who has played for the Mavericks, made an All-Star game, but never made an All-Star game as a Maverick. There are 4 other active NBA players who can say the same. So these are active NBA players who have played for the Mavs at one point in their career. They have made an All-Star game at one point in their career, but they never did it as a Maverick. And you get 0.5 points per correct answer because there are 4 of them.
So I've got first guess?
Yeah, you get all the guesses.
I named them all.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you could sweep
Vince
it.
Carter.
Vince Carter, well, unfortunately, Tim, he is not active. He is no longer active.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I really blew through that. Oh, wow. This is
It was very
embarrassing.
confident, though. Very confident. Guess.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, it would have been right. Rajon Rondo also would have been right, except also not active.
Oh,
Andrew,
comprehension is right here. My brain's still a little hazy from being. Oh my goodness! What a rough start. This is the equivalent of spilling coffee onto my keyboard. Oh goodness! I heard half the question. I already started. The brain was already going.
Yeah. What about the zinger? What about the zinger?
That's right, Andrew.
Yeah.
Kristaps Porzingis, he's one. Can you name the other 3?
Brunson?
Brunson is one. That gets you a full point, Andrew. Can you name the other 2?
Active Mavs that made the All-Star team. Those are the first 2 that came to my brain. I don't know. I don't know. I'm done. I don't know.
I'm done. Trivia over. Well,
DeAndre
one you're going
Jordan?
to feel. Yes, DeAndre Jordan is a very good one. The other one, I mean, come on, guys. The easiest one.
Oh, who are we missing? Oh, Klay Thompson.
Kyrie Irving.
Oh, Kyrie. You said Klay Thompson. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
durr.
All right, Andrew, you did get 1 point. You control the board.
How did I not get that one? That was bad. Number 1. Number 1.
Okay, what is the fewest number of field goals Luka has ever attempted during an NBA game in which he played at least 30 minutes? Now, you get to choose who answers first. So you can make Tim answer, and then you go higher or lower, or
What's
you
the
answer.
minutes again? 30?
At least 30 minutes. What's the fewest field goal attempts he has taken in an NBA game throughout his entire career?
Wow.
And if either one you get it right, exactly right, you do get a bonus point.
I'll go 9.
Okay, Andrew's setting the bar at 9. Tim, would you like to go higher or lower than 9 field goal attempts?
Higher.
Tim, that is correct. The correct answer is 11.
Oh, man, I was going to say 11, but I'm like, I use 11 too much. It's my favorite number. Use it too much. I'm going to go 9. Dang it.
Whatever. That sounded like Danny Ainge when he talks about, I almost traded for that guy.
Listen.
I was just about to draft that guy.
Hey, listen, I have a never mind. Go on.
All right, the game is tied. Tim, you've controlled the board.
6.
Question number 6. Which of the following is the only category for which Dallas is not ranked in the top half of the league in terms of points per play. So I'm going to give you 4 types, so it'll make more sense when you hear it. Half-court offense, transition offense, half-court defense, transition defense. So 3 of those 4, they are top half of the league. Yes, just this season.
Transition defense.
That is incorrect, if you can believe it.
Wow. I am surprised.
So, Andrew, which one are they bottom half of the league in terms of points per play? Half-court offense, transition offense, half-court defense.
Oh, man.
And this is this by volume or is this by points per?
This is points per play. Okay. Yeah. So for defense, like how much they're giving up per play.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do half-court defense.
Half-court defense.
Isn't that what you said? Isn't that one of them?
Yes, that is what I said.
Okay.
Andrew, that is also incorrect. I am sorry. It is transition offense.
Seriously?
Currently, in terms of points per play, they are 19th in the league.
Wow.
Only one of those, they are bottom half.
They've given up a lot of quantity of transition defense, I would say. But
okay.
maybe not the efficiency. I was going to go with that either way. But.
Okay, Andrew, board is yours.
2.
Question number 2. Assuming he stays healthy, Luka will soon pass Dirk for 4th all-time in total assists in Mavs franchise history.
Wow.
Who will be the 3 players left for Luka to jump? And you get 1 point per correct answer. So total assists, Mavs history. Basically the top 3. You just give me the top 3.
Jason Kidd?
Very good, Andrew. That is correct. Can you get anyone else?
Oh, I have to. Oh, we're not going back and forth.
We are not going back and forth. You could get all 3 points,
Okay.
Andrew.
Okay.
How
This would be a
exciting.
great time to guess Vince Carter.
Steve Nash?
No. All right, Tim, you got any guesses for who's 2 and 3?
Derek Harper.
Derek Harper's number 2. That is correct for a point.
Dang.
And so Jason Kidd was 1, so this is number 3. Is it?
This is number 3.
Oh gosh, this is Brad Davis.
Yes, I didn't know if you'd get. Yeah. It was
Dang.
Brad Davis.
Just by longevity, he actually has his number retired with the team, which
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Brad
he does.
Davis.
He does indeed. I think if they had to do it over, maybe it wouldn't happen. But he was one of those people who that feels bad. Brad Davis, he was a fine player during his day, but he was also someone with the team from the start of the Mavericks franchise existence, or within a season, and then he spent all 13 seasons with them. So
He's
Great
a
lifer.
lifer.
Yeah,
Great mustache, Brad Davis.
indeed.
Okay, Tim, you have control of the board. You also have a lead now, 3-2.
5.
Question number 5. Through 13 games, which Maverick has the most negative on-off differential per cleaning the glass at minus 12.7? And to clarify, this is not someone who's played 10 minutes. This is a regular rotation player. There's no funny business. It's a guy who's playing every night.
So you remember when I was talking about the first quarter struggles, and there's been an interesting thing about Dallas where they've started a player who I don't think is their best player. And that player at that position, position. And that player has been Daniel Gafford. So let me go with Daniel Gafford.
Daniel Gafford. Tim, that is absolutely incorrect. That means Andrew has a chance to steal.
Good logic, though.
It was great logic.
Does Spencer Dinwiddie count for this?
It's a name you could say.
He's been in the rotation pretty much every game. I think he has enough minutes.
Okay, I'll say Spencer Dinwiddie.
Okay. We have a correction because I did this before the Jazz game.
Yeah.
There's a new worst. And guess who it is? Daniel Gafford, which means Tim gets the points.
Who was it before?
Wow.
Who was it before?
It was Kyrie.
Oh, okay. I was going to be
Kyrie
mad
was
I was going to be mad if it was Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
Wait,
No,
Kyrie.
no.
I knew Kyrie's splits had been very, very odd. Because he's been their best player so far. This is one reminder that on-off can be a little funky. Kyrie has objectively been the team's best player thus so far.
Yeah.
His splits have been a little weird and bad. Yeah.
Yeah, another funny on-off one that I noticed is, do you know who has the best on-off for the Sixers right now?
No.
Eric Gordon, who, like, if you ever see a Sixers fan talk about Eric Gordon on Twitter right now, they're just disgusted with him. It seems like every game. So you're right. On-off doesn't really mean anything right now. Okay, Andrew, board is yours. You're down 5-2, Andrew.
Yikes.
You're getting shellacked.
I'm getting shellacked. Number 3.
Question number 3. Dallas has 2 pairs of teammates that attended the same college. Can you name both pairs? And you get 1 point per correct answer. So 2 pairs of players. Each pair played together at the same, well, not together, but they played at the same college.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, one pair very much did not play together. Quite a bit of distance.
Yes.
That's a hint.
A lot of difference between both of these, yeah.
That's a hint. Gosh.
What is the other one?
My brain is it's not functioning well right now.
Once that coffee got poured, you know.
Derek Lively and Kyrie Irving both played at Duke.
That is correct. Can you get the other one? The tougher one.
Shoot. Oh, I think Quentin Grimes played before he was at Houston. He played at Kansas, and so did guy who had his hands on his head last night, just absolutely bewildered by the final play. Markieff Morris. Is that it?
Wow, that is correct, Andrew.
Yes.
Great pull.
I would not have
All
got
right.
that. That was impressive.
We have a game on our hands. 2 questions left. Tim is up 5-4. Tim has control of the board.
8.
My favorite question. In 2018, Kyrie Irving starred in the movie Uncle Drew, a movie based on a commercial about soda. We are going to name every current and former NBA player that appeared in that movie.
Oh my gosh.
So how this works is Tim is already shaking his head.
Yeah.
Have you seen this movie? Have you seen the movie,
I
Tim?
never watched it.
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
Well, listen, their names you know, okay? Their names you know.
Right. So 2018.
So Tim will give me a name, and then Andrew will give me a name. We'll go back and forth until one of you stumbles. So these are, some of them are current NBA players. Most of them are former NBA players that appeared in Uncle Drew, the 2018 film Uncle Drew.
So I'm just setting the scene for both of those. So 2018, and it has to be someone who would be likely to appear in something like this. Let's start with Carmelo Anthony.
Carmelo Anthony, unfortunately, that is incorrect, Tim.
Damn.
Now, Andrew, to get this right, you just need to name one name. And get it right.
Okay. Was James Harden in Uncle Drew?
No, you don't get the point either. Wow. Okay, here's the full list.
Okay, let's hear it.
Shaq.
Ow.
Seems like an obvious one, you know? Shaq. Chris
Okay.
Webber, Reggie Miller, Nate Robb, Aaron Gordon, Earl the Pearl Monroe,
Aaron
Chris
Gordon?
Mullin, Bill Walton, Steve Nash, George Gervin, David Robinson, Jerry West, Rick Barry, and Dikembe Mutombo. They were
Wow.
all in Uncle Drew.
It's it is funny how many like current guys just were not in that movie. Because I'm thinking
Nope.
like, okay, who is like Kyrie friends with in the NBA? You know,
I tried to give you a hint that it's mostly former NBA players.
Well,
I guess-
that's why I went with Carmelo. I thought it would be like his peers at the time.
Oh, I see.
yeah, like I thought it would be like noted.
I should have said
peers
legends.
Yeah,
Although Carmelo's
yeah.
a legend too. That wouldn't have helped either. I should have said 50-year-olds or over.
Did you see Carmelo this week on his pod was saying that the moment that he knew he didn't want to be in the NBA was when Michael Porter Jr. called him Unk?
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Okay,
Better than
Andrew,
being
this
called
sets up.
Pop.
Pop. This sets up a final question. Or basically, it just comes down to you, Andrew. If you get this right, you win the week. If you don't, you lose.
Okay.
Simple
okay,
as that.
Okay, I'm locking in.
Dwight Powell is the longest tenured Maverick, having
Yeah.
played for Dallas since the 2014-15 season.
Okay.
Which current or former teammate has Powell played the most amount of games with in his career?
Oh, current or former.
Current or former. Could be a current Mav, could be a former Mav.
Okay. Wow.
This is for all the marbles, Andrew. Could win the week with a correct answer.
Shoot. Who would this be? I mean, I guess Luka just seems like the wrong answer. I guess I'll just say Luka, though, because I'm sure he's played a lot of minutes with him, but Luka?
Correct answer. Most minutes played, most games played
This just can't be the right answer.
with Dwight Powell was not Luka. Now that means Tim wins the week. Tim, do you just to bury Andrew further? Any guesses?
So Dirk kind of has the same situation where it feels like a little bit too obvious. And so I'm going to say, actually, so I was going to say Devin Harris or I was going to say JJ Barea, but I think I'm going to say Maxey. I think Maxey. Maxey is my guess.
That's an interesting, yeah.
3 names, all wrong. Correct answer, Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith. But the good news, Tim, you
interesting.
won the
Yeah.
week.
I should've
You have
got that.
defeated Andrew 5-4. Congratulations.
I do
Look
think
at that.
between the
That
two
was a
of
clutch
us, we
time
named, like, the top
performance.
6.
That was a clutch time performance. And
Yeah.
I played the role of Luka in there. It's kind of fitting that I even said Luka. Go check out Tim's work at the All City Network. You can see him on are you doing the postgame show most of the time for DLLS?
Yeah, I'm always hopping on. You know, as soon as I finish up my post game duties. But yeah, I'm still a reporter and a writer. But yeah, we're also 5 times a week, and I'll be on just about every show. And you can find my writing at alldlls.com.
Awesome. Tim, thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate y'all.
All right, Andrew, that was Mavs week. And what a kind of awful week it was. We're sorry.
What kind of awful week it was. Who's next? Who's next on our list?
which franchise are we going to destroy next? So we're about to spin a wheel. This is Wheel of Fandom. We're spinning a wheel, picking a team, going to become a fan of that team for the next week. Hopefully they'll win a lot of games. And let's see what team that will be. Our Wheel of Fandom team for next week will be... the Philadelphia 76ers.
You've got to be kidding me. Oh,
Philadelphia.
No. Hey, listen, at least they're interesting. At least maybe we'll get some Embiid games here. I feel awful. I've got a pit in my stomach now, like for Sixers fans getting the wheel. The wheel has been not kind to the teams that it's landed on.
So they're on a road trip. They start a road trip Friday night against Orlando.
Okay.
Then they go to Miami, and then they go to Memphis. Hey, we'll get to see Embiid against Zach Edey. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
2 big guys.
Giants.
That's
cool.
fun.
Cool. Sorry, Sixers fans. It might get a little worse before it gets better. Hey, if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we'll read it on the show. Like this one from Miss ZC Zusen. Says 5 stars. Nice. Love the pod. Keep up the good stuff. Love from Poland. Thank you so much for that review. And this next one comes from Nightbear49. 5 stars. I got a shout out on the pod. I'm writing this review because my Reddit post about Anthony Edwards was referenced on Saturday Slam-A-Jam. That's super cool. To be fair, it was sharing a stat from the baseball writer, also from The Athletic, Aaron Gleeman. Either way, love the pod. You guys are great. Been listening since before the format change. So thank you so much for that review. Again, leave us a review. We'll read it on the show. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll be back next week with another show. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend and the basketball. I'll talk to you guys again next Saturday.